Hi everybody, my name is Max and today I'm making a sheath for the steak knife that I made about a month ago. If you haven't seen the video about that, you can click on the link in the description or on screen right now. I started out by making these paper templates and now I'm cutting out the first pieces of the leather. You need a really sharp blade to cut leather, so I used a new utility knife. Alternatively, you can use a razor blade, that works really well too. So here I'm doing a little test fit, and this is basically the first time I ever worked with leather, so I did some sewing before, but I'm learning as I go here. So here I'm dyeing the edge of one of the pieces because I'm about to glue them together, and before that I need to burnish them. And all you need to do for that is apply some heat and friction and wax. So now it's time to glue together the first two pieces, and I'm using a special leather glue, which is a kind of contact cement. So you apply the glue all the way to the edge, that's really important. Then you let it dry a little bit, like 5 or 10 minutes, and you press the two pieces together and they bond instantly. Here I'm thinning out a piece of leather to create a little strap that stops the blade from falling out. I made this little template and then I cut it out. I should really have used a razor blade for this, or a brand new sharp blade, because this was dull already, just from cutting the first pieces. So don't repeat the same mistake that I did. I had to burnish a lot more edges, so I thought maybe I go to the hardware store, try to see if I could find something that could help me with this. And I actually found these wheels, and they're just pulleys for ropes. And they come in different sizes, and they were just perfect, and really cheap as well. So all that burnishing really does it takes the wax that you applied earlier and rubs it into the fibers, and that makes the edges really nice and smooth. It also stops them from fraying. I used these little snap fasteners to hold down the latch, and they're really easy to install. They're basically tiny rivets, and they come with this little tool where you put everything inside, then you apply some pressure and that fastens the rivet. Now that the latch is complete, I can glue it down to the front piece of the sheath. But I'm also adding some stitches to make sure it never comes off. To make the holes for the stitches, I used this little punch. They're really cheap and you can get them on Amazon. I wanted the thread to be really flush with the surface, so I used this knife to cut little grooves for it. If you think threading a needle is difficult, then try filming it. I didn't have wax thread, so I made my own with this candle wax here. And now it's time for the first seam. You can see that on the inside I removed a little bit of leather. I made this hollow area so the thread is really nice and flush, because I was afraid that the knife would cut the threads. And now I decided to put this little patch on top. I just took a regular piece of leather and then with a razor blade I made this really thin. Let the glue dry a little bit, put it on, apply some pressure, and that's it. So now it's time to glue together the two sides of the pouch, and I used contact cement again, made sure it's applied all the way to the edges, that's really important. And we've got a nice fit. I used the disc sander to sand the edges flush. And then I used a black marker to dye the edges. And then I continued burnishing the edges with the drill press. And that was really easy, really quick, much quicker than by hand. I used a smaller wheel for the small edges. And there you see how smooth the edges become. Here I'm adding the other side of the snap fastener. And I got the dimensions just about right, so the knife can't fall out. The belt loop is made from the same piece that the sheath is made out of, and I'm thinning out the edges here. So when I glue it together, it's flush and there's no edge. So I'm applying a lot of contact cement to both areas. Let it dry a little bit, then press it together, and that's a really solid bond. Now it's time for the main seam, and I used this punch to create an even spacing. And it's a good idea to put some wax on these punches, because that makes the wax get into the holes and also makes it easier to remove the punches. The good thing about these punches is that they create a nice even spacing, but they only push the leather aside, they don't remove it. So I used a 1.5mm drill bit to drill the holes out one more time, so that the needles would have enough space. And now I'm ready for sewing. This actually took much longer than expected. I spent 1.5 hours on this one seam that goes around. I'm using 2 needles and 2 separate threads, and they're always crossing over inside the hole. The advantage of that is that you don't have to have one really long string, but you can rather have 2 smaller strings, and that makes the handling a lot easier. At the end I knotted both ends together with 2 knots, cut them off, and on the axis I put a tiny dab of glue to secure them. From all the sewing the edges became a little bit wavy, so I used a hammer to flatten everything down, and it also made a better fit for the blade. So here's the final product. I'm really happy with how this turned out. It works really well, it's really functional, and now it's time to put it on the shelf, because let's face it, you're not right through it, you don't carry a knife around. But it was still a lot of fun to make. So if you like these kind of videos, make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on my future projects.